Old Florida has a unique attitude and personality all of her very own. Hers is a wild and free spirit that truly cannot be found anywhere else in the world. Old Florida is beauty, mystery, and enchantment. Why, she is pure Southern charm and embodies a character of community and a sense of place. Yet today, Old Florida is vanishing, possibly becoming just a memory herself. The good news is, the feeling of romance in Old Florida can still be found if you know where to look. Come along with us on our search as we find interesting and insightful people, places, and historic landscapes of the real Old Florida.
Good afternoon, friends, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Old Florida. I'm really glad you could join us today, and I think you're going to be glad too by the end of the day. Today we are in a beautiful little town by the name of Hernando. It got its name in honor of our Citrus County's home county, which was Hernando, and that was also named after the explorer Hernando de Soto. So we have a lot of history and things in these areas, and today we're here in Hernando to tell you a little bit about how it got started and the pioneer families, the Crofts, the Van Nesses and such that came in here and helped to make this a community. We're going to learn about phosphate and the phosphate industry that started here in this area. And we're going to just learn about a whole bunch of things today. So stay with us because you're not going to want to miss this. This is Lake Hernando. This is the northern end of the Salapopka chain of lakes. And of course, as I said, the town started because of phosphate. But after the phosphate ran out, something else had to happen. So they had oranges, they had other things, but then they started to realize the beauty and the peace and the serenity that they had here with this nature and these lakes and all this beauty. So what happened next actually was a twist that took all of Florida by storm, and it was called tin can tourism. And in this area here especially, a lot of the places that started were as tin can tourist places. And they called them tin can tourists, of course, because all the little campers were little silver things behind them, and the people would come and they would stay, and they were the tin can tourists. So it was a very big thing in Florida back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Today, there's still some of these places here in Hernando that are just like they were back then. You've got Ogle's Fish Camp, he started, and then if you look out behind me, this would be Parsons Point. The road goes all the way out Parsons Point. And you see all these beautiful homes and things out there. Out in that area is where they really started. Mr. Parsons made a bunch of the different areas for homes and little places that people could come and spend the winters. And it caught on so well that then there was another one up in here, and Mr. Ogles went up here, and Mr. Westbrook, and they had another place up here on the highway. So this area, while the phosphate ended and everybody just kind of didn't know what to do with themselves, they looked to Mother Nature, and they looked to history, and they looked to beauty, and then they looked a little bit forward. And today we have this beautiful lake and this beautiful area that just makes you just want to sit back and have a glass of sweet tea. It's amazing. The breeze here is beautiful. The fish in this lake are amazing. They have dragon boat festivals on this lake. They've done quite a bit to bring back this area. So when you get a chance, come on down. They have a little beach here. And this is basically the center point of Hernando now. This is the gathering place. So when you're in this area, please stop and check it out. As I was going through pictures and trying to find information and research on this show, I came across an old picture from the late 1800s, maybe early 1900s, but I'm thinking closer towards the 1800s. It was a picture probably stationed right up here behind me a little bit on the other side of the highway. And right here, about where I'm standing now, right here, you'll notice in the picture there is a square box. You've got there's going to be buildings down both of these sides of this road. And remember, there were no cars in this day. It was still horse and buggy days. In the middle of the road, you see this big square thing. That was an open well. And people would come and they would take out with the scoop and they would drink, or they would put it their horses or whatever. And that was where they got their water, right here in the middle of town. One of the very interesting pioneers that we had here, his name was E.C. May. He was not only a racket store operator, but he had orange groves. He was an orange grove proprietor. Did all kinds of things. He'd gone broke and then he'd come back and he'd made money and then he'd lost money. And he always seemed to keep it moving somehow. Well, after he was done with that, he decided he wanted to get out of that business. So then he decided he wanted to go into law. So he became a lawyer. And after that, he decided he wanted to run for county judge. Now at the time, the courthouse circle was something you didn't want to mess with. And they said that he would be committing political suicide if he went up against the judge that was in. And he says, well, I didn't have anything political before. He goes, so it's not going to hurt my reputation. And you know what happened? He won. And he continued in our county business and our county government. Then he went on to the state legislature, and he was also a representative for Citrus County there. Now, Mr. May was quite the little old character, and he had written a couple of books. One is called Gators, Skeeters, and Malary, and the other one is called From Dawn to Sunset. And they're pioneer recollections of his, in his own words and in his own verbiage, which is just amazing to hear him. You can actually hear him talking and telling the story the way it was supposed to be told. He tells in one of these books about a man named Dan Hearn. Now, Dan Hearn didn't know a lot about his history, but he did know that his mother was a slave and she was taken by the Seminoles and brought to live with them. And actually, I believe one of the Seminoles was listed was Mr. Billy Bowlegs. And they believed that he was the original Billy Bowlegs, as we know there were 2 or 3 of them. Now, Mr. May worked with Dan Hearn for quite some time, and he noticed one day, never asked him about it, but he noticed that he had one knuckle was missing on his hand. And so one day when they were out clearing something on one of the islands, he asked him the story. Well, the story goes like this. It seems that back in that time, Fort Fannin, the white people up there had built a fort, and the Seminoles were not happy. So they were getting ready to go to battle. And all of the Indians that they'd gotten slaves, well, the older ones they knew, but they were afraid when they went into battle, if these other ones the children were captured, what was going to happen to them? How would they know that they were their slaves? So what happened was a little disturbing to us nowadays, but at the same time, it really gives you an idea of where they were at that time. So picture, if you will, right now I'm standing in the Y in Hernando. To my left over here is south, and you're going to Floral City in Inverness. Up here is the Y, and if you take the Y that way, you go to Dunellen on 41. And if you take the Y this way, you go up 200 and you hit Stokes Ferry, and then you go on into Ocala. So this area right in here, there was a giant tree, and it was probably 150 years old, he said, at that time. And it probably went out 150 feet in both directions, just this huge overhanging tree that stood right about where we're standing now. So all of the Indians brought their slaves, and they all met right here under this tree. And all of the little black children would line up under 16, and from what I believe, they said there were about 50 of them in total. And an Indian would come down the line, and he would grab the child's finger, pull it out, and cut it off with one fell swoop, right there. That was it. He said there were no Band-Aids, and there was no painkillers. And because you were an Indian, there was no crying. Now, around 1889, 1890 is when the phosphate started here. A gentleman named Albertus Voigt, depending on how you want to say it, he discovered phosphate on his land. And he had it tested, and they decided it was phosphate. So that's actually what started the boom here. They started the camp mine. It became a boom. It started booming. And up to you go north here on 41, and there's still, you can actually see where some of the old mines were off to the sides. There's still remnants of them up there. Now, the phosphate life was a very hard life. And when we say that these towns were like old West towns, they were very much that way. There was lots of brawls and lots of drunkenness and lots of shootings and all kinds of things that happened. Now, of course, at that time, you had all the people moving in, you had the phosphate here. Well, you have to move the phosphate. And how are you going to do that unless you have a railroad? So the railroad came through here and they asked the people in Hernando if they could have the right of way in exchange for the railroad company building a terminal here. So they had a railroad station here that the railroad company kept up, and they were then given the right of way by the people, I believe it was Nickerson, who owned the property. The Rails to Trails runs right behind here, and it is the old remnants, just like in Floral City. It connects to that, and it's the old remnants of the phosphate era here in this area and the trains that ran. Now, Hernando was such a crazy little town at the time, and the phosphate mines and the gentlemen were so crazy that when the phosphate mines would close down, they would ring a bell in town, so the woman could get off the streets and they could be safe because the men were coming home and they wanted to give them all the space that they could. So, you know, we live day to day and we do things and we have new buildings and all this new stuff that's just wonderful. But it's places like this that take old buildings and make them something new again. They take the history and they refurbish it and they make it their own and they add to what was already there. And that's what we're going to talk about next. There's a building here and it was quite a few different things on the edge of 41 here. Now it is called the Burger Station, and it is owned by a few local people here, and we're gonna go over there and talk to them and just see what they get out of putting a business in an old historic building.
The Hernando Farmers Market and Aunt Martha's Produce, providing the area's greatest selection of farm fresh products with friendly, old-fashioned customer service. The Hernando Farmers Market in Hernando offers fresh vegetables and fruit picked daily from across the street, grown naturally and pesticide-free by the Path Homeless Shelter. Wake up every morning to the delectable smell of our organic coffee beans and fresh bread and muffins prepared by Cusano Bakery. Experience the delicious and rich taste of homemade butter and pure cow and goat's milk with the cream on top. The Farmers Market also carries an incredible quality of wild-caught seafood and certified Angus meats. When you visit the Hernando Farmers Market, you'll find out why "Pick fresh today" is our favorite saying. And when you're in the historic village of Floral City, no trip would be complete without stopping at Aunt Martha's Produce. For over 11 years, Aunt Martha and her family have been keeping the tradition of selling the best and local favorites, from mouth-watering fruits and vegetables to old-fashioned Amish favorites like jams, jellies, cheese, and noodles. Our specialty sodas are perfectly refreshing on those hot summer days, and we're always serving up fresh hot batches of Florida's comfort food, boiled peanuts. Make an appointment now to experience your slice of the real old Florida by taking a relaxing and informative history tour of the iconic Avenue of the Oaks. At Aunt Martha's, you come in as a stranger, but when you leave, you're family. The Hernando Farmers Market and Aunt Martha's, providing you and your family with the best in local produce in West Central Florida.
Now, I'm always talking about phosphates and the phosphate mines, and what were they looking for? What is phosphate? This is phosphate. This is a hard phosphate rock. And if you notice, down in here, a lot of the buildings you'll see here in Florida, and especially in Hernando, Floral City, Donnell, in this area, they were built with these rocks that were used out of there. Now, this is the hard rock that would be taken out. But in the middle of this hard rock was a clay-like vein that runs. And that's what they used for ammunitions and all kinds of things. Now, phosphate was huge here until the First World War broke out. And then we were in embargo with Germany and we weren't producing anymore. There was no more need for this. So this phosphate was used not only as a money-making thing for this area, it was also used in building materials and all kinds of things. So without it, we wouldn't have it. As a matter of fact, one of the buildings that I want you to take a look at today, that we're gonna look at, is the Burger Station. It was once a gas station. It was once a few other things. But today, this is the Burger Station. And it's right here at the Y on 41 and 200 in the town of Hernando. It is owned by two wonderful families. They have two restaurants, Stump Knockers on the river and on the square. John and his brother own that. And then Shane owns Red's, which is right across the street. So I believe today we're gonna maybe get to talk to Shane a little bit and see what he thinks about what it's like to have a business in an old community historic building. Does he get any more people? Does he get some really good questions? Is there anything cool he can tell us? We're gonna find out. Okay, friends, Right now, I want to introduce you to a friend of ours, a new friend that we've just made. This is Shane. Hello, dear. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Thanks for being here today. I'm so glad that you could join us and talk to us a little bit about, and the friends about your business here. Now, I know that the burger station is new, but it wasn't always the burger station.
No.
What's the difference? I mean, what does it mean for you? What do you get out of it to take something old like this, put your heart and your soul into it, and make it what it is today, as opposed to just building a new building and leaving the old one sit?
Well, I mean, these old buildings mean so much to Tim and I. They just, they need to be preserved and they need to be brought back to life. These buildings have been sitting empty for years and years. When Tim and I bought this building, we just found it in our heart that it was worth saving. So we got together, and we're in the restaurant business, so that's what we do and that's what we know. But we also, we love the town we live in. We both live here on the lake in Hernando.
Right.
So it's about reinvesting and kind of
Community building.
and seeing something that we believe in, and just putting forth the effort and making it happen and bringing it back to life. And that's what this building was really all about. It was a venture to save something, and then based on what we do every day is the restaurant business.
Right.
We just felt like it lended itself to create a cool old Florida restaurant here in Hernando.
And the last few years, everybody's been working so hard to bring Hernando back to what it was. And I got to tell you, my hat's off to you. You guys are doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And when I walk by, or when I drive by places, I'm like, ooh, this would look good there. Ooh, this would go there. I was so tickled when you guys got this place. And then the way you've made it, perfect.
Well, thank you.
Just perfect. So
Appreciate that.
thank you so much. And so when you guys are in Hernando, don't forget, if you're going to do something on the lake or you're just stopping by, stop and see Shane. We're right here at the burger station. Now, if you follow the rock wall that was up there before the burger station, and you notice it comes all the way down, comes all the way through here, and right here you've got beautiful steps that led up to what was a house built by the Westbrooks. And it was a hotel, and it was many things. Eventually, before they tore it down in the late 70s, it was an antique store, and it still sat there just as beautiful as the day it was built. Now, there's things here that are still here after all these years. If you notice, that's for the gate. You've got the gate hinges here, and you've got your extra concrete things so that you could put, the fence would have been higher. There's even over here the bolts where it would have held it. So even after all these years, you still have all of this hardware and all of the stuff, and it's right here. It's right here off the road. Now, I've lived here for 40 years, and I gotta tell you, I have never seen, really paid attention to it or seen that this was here. But one thing I definitely did not see before is this. Look what I found. Anybody want to wash your hands? This is the craziest thing I think I've ever seen. Maybe it was for the old days when they were riding horses or something and they needed to wash their hands. But I can tell you that, knowing a little bit of antique history like I do, these are like willow. I mean, these are nice little plates that are down in here. And they've done it all nice and decoratively. And it was right here on the side of the road. So when you came from fishing or whatever, I guess before you went in the house, Ma would say, you gotta wash your hands. So you just never know what you're gonna find in Hernando, Florida.
The Hernando Farmers Market and Aunt Martha's Produce, providing the area's greatest selection of farm fresh products with friendly, old-fashioned customer service. The Hernando Farmers Market in Hernando offers fresh vegetables and fruit picked daily from across the street, grown naturally and pesticide-free by the Path Homeless Shelter. Wake up every morning to the delectable smell of our organic coffee beans and fresh bread and muffins prepared by Cusano Bakery. Experience the delicious and rich taste of homemade butter and pure cow and goat's milk with the cream on top. The farmers market also carries an incredible quality of wild-caught seafood and certified Angus meats. When you visit the Hernando Farmers Market, you'll find out why. Picked fresh today is our favorite saying. And when you're in the historic village of Floral City, no trip would be complete without stopping at Aunt Martha's Produce. For over 11 years, Aunt Martha and her family have been keeping the tradition of selling the best and local favorites, from mouth-watering fruits and vegetables to old-fashioned Amish favorites like jams, jellies, cheese, and noodles. Our specialty sodas are perfectly refreshing on those hot summer days, and we're always serving up fresh, hot batches of Florida's comfort food, boiled peanuts. Make an appointment now to experience your slice of the real old Florida by taking a relaxing and informative history tour of the iconic Avenue of the Oaks. At Aunt Martha's, you come in as a stranger, but when you leave, you're family. The Hernando Farmers Market and Aunt Martha's, providing you and your family with the best in local produce in West Central Florida.
Welcome back, friends. Well, you might recognize the surroundings because it wouldn't be a real old Florida show if we did not go and show you a cemetery. So here we are in this cemetery. It is back in the late 1800s. One of the pioneering families here was Nickerson. And the Nickersons owned all of this property, and their homestead was here and all of what is now town. In the 1880s, a company came here and asked Mrs. Nickerson if she would sell them some of the property for the town. And she did. So they had the town as 4 of their sections, if you will. And then they made sure that 4 sections right in here were given for a cemetery to be used by the pioneer families and whoever for as long as they could. This still is the place for quite a few of the pioneer families. We've got the Croft family is one, the Van Ness family is another. You've got the Simmons family, the Alexander family. You've got the Westbrooks and the Nickersons and Spires, and there's just so many I can't even tell you, but you all know them because most of you people, if you're from Citrus County, are related to them. So right here what we have, this is the Croft area, and this would be William Croft and his family and his sons. Now, William Croft was a judge, and he came here in the late 1800s, early 1880s. And I think it was 1881. We weren't a town yet. Hernando was not a town. However, he started the first post office, and he kept it going. And then the postmasters were his family for years after that. And they continue to be in this area today. They have businesses and homes and families, and they continue to populate this area just like their ancestors did. The family we were talking about, the Nickerson family, this would be he and his wife's gravesite, and they're right here next to 486. And it's kind of quaint that they're in this corner and they kind of keep an eye on the rest of it. So this was Charles Nickerson and his wife, Dot Mary Story Croft. She was the daughter of Edward and Susan Croft. So as you can see, I might mention a few of these names, but they all eventually come back in, and all these families intermarried, and those are the people who still populate here today. Now, you remember when we were down in front of the rock wall, I was talking about the Westbrooks and the house that they had built there. Well, this is Mr. and Mrs. Westbrook. And they, as well actually as E.C. May, had left Hernando for a short period to go to California, Texas, wherever, but they found it much nicer here, and they ended up coming back. So now they've chosen to spend eternity right here with us. Now, another sad thing about the pioneer families and things that, you know, it was just a way of life back then. But there's 3 stones right back here behind the mom and dad. The 3 stones are Clarence Ernest, who died in 1893 at the age of 7, Sue Westbrook, who died in 1900 at the age of 6 months, and Reese Croft Westbrook, that died in 1910, and he was only about 3.5 years old. So the pioneer life was not kind, and it was not gentle, and people got sick and they died and they had diseases, and then they'd get better, and it was just a crapshoot. You just never knew. So you lived the best life you could, and you gave it all you got, because that's all you had in this world, is whatever you made to leave to your children, to leave a legacy. And we are so, so pleased that these people decided to come here and not only live here, but like I've said with many others, they not only made this their home, but they chose to spend eternity here. And that's pretty special in my book. Well, friends, I don't know about you, but I have had an amazing day just kind of rambling around Hernando, getting to talk to some of the locals and getting to see some of these beautiful places that I might not have seen, because even though I live here, I still drive by these places and not even pay attention sometimes, just like most people. So I wanted to let you know that the story I gave you about E.C. May and the books that he wrote are available. You can find them online or in some of the Floral City Museum has them. This first one is called Gators, Skeeters, and Malary, and it's got quite a few really cute stories, like I said, written in his verbiage. And then the second one is From Dawn to Sunset, and it is a recollections of a pioneer Florida judge, and this is volume 2. And this really gives you an insight into exactly what was happening and exactly how people were back in the days when all this started. So today, friends, I would like to thank Aunt Martha's Produce, and of course, I would like to thank the Hernando Farmers Market, Fresh Market, for being our sponsors. I would also like to extend a huge thank you to Shane from the Burger Station and all the people there that were so wonderful and just let us walk around and acted like we owned the place. So thank you so much to everyone. And I want to make sure I mention also, this is this cemetery. To my left, right up at the top of the hill here, is another cemetery, and that's where the Simmons family, the Alexander family, the Moody, there's quite a few of them up there, of the African American people here. So be sure when you're here, take a look here, and then go on up the hill, because the Alexander family has been quite instrumental in Hernando and still are. So first they were police officers and they took care of us, and now the brothers have gone and became ministers and their wives, and they have the Church Without Walls here in Hernando, and they do a great thing to help so many people here, and it's really appreciated by the entire county. So thanks again, friends, and anytime you want to come by Hernando or any place here, stop and ask, and you just tell them that Shannon sent you, because here, this is the real old Florida.